Ready?
All right, welcome to Halitics, and I am really psyched. We've had such great guests last week. Medea Benjamin from Code Pink. Yesterday, journalist Marion Douglas Ungaro, and today we've got Maury Johnson. Maury is from Power. You can see he is a fierce friend of the
Yes.
earth, and you're also, I love that, hero from the holler. And I don't know whether you all think that's a little bit, tiny bit. Oh, I see. Yeah, there it is. Hero from the holler, power, protect our water heritage rights. But I love that poetry there where it's, what is it? The same consonant, they call that something. It's not assonance. I mean, I'm an ass, Maury, but it's not assonance. It's
No,
some,
you're not.
what is it? Do you know that? Did you take poetry in school? Because I just don't remember. There's a word
I
like,
I had I just had the basics. I wasn't an English major, but in college you have to take some English.
so a holler. I know there's a song by Loretta Lynn where she's a coal miner's
Well,
daughter
miner's daughter from Butcher Holler,
from Butcher Holler. So a holler is a valley. I got that right.
Narrow Valley in the mountains.
Little narrow valley. That's right. And you are with Power. Tell us, Maury, what Power. By the way, that term comes from West Virginia Highlands
No,
Conservancy.
the term high the West Virginia Highland Conservancy is another word, part of a friend. Powers is a coalition of folks from across West Virginia and Virginia that was organized to fight the Mountain Valley Pipeline. And the Power stands for Protect Our Water Heritage and Rights. We have a website, it's power.org, and people can see all the great work that's been by Power. We also, after the Mountain Valley Pipeline was uh, announced, they later announced an extension project called the Southgate, or the MVP Southgate, and we work with seven directions of service at Virginia and North Carolina, and we all kind of we've as every organization we're growing. We're actually involved in lots of the fossil fuel fights and social injustice fights around with the people from a lot of different organizations, People versus Fossil Fuel, Our Revolution, a lot of different people. It's how we met. Hal was how we
Yeah.
met.
No, and folks are wondering
So,
why I'm looking to the side. I'm actually just want to confirming more, and I'm sure we are on live, but I just always get a little nervous. As you mentioned, you were watching, you're like, oh, you're just getting your feet wet. We are getting our feet wet. Maury is really helping us. I call this a soft launch. That's kind of my term for this, where we, I didn't really promote it too aggressively, but Maury's got a lot of folks watching us in West Virginia and along the route of that
well,
Mississippi
I sent,
pipeline.
I, I sent this notice out to people all over the country. So
Wow.
you probably have viewers from around the country today. I know a lot of people said they would try to watch or they watch the video later. Actually, got
We're on. I just want to confirm I can see right now we are absolutely live on the
you're always on,
Halitics
Hal.
channel. Subscribe and like. And subscribe is more important. You can hate them, but as long as you subscribe at some point, hopefully they'll send me a few bucks every 8 weeks or something. I don't know how many more, but I don't want to ever ask anyone for money because I know how tough times are and we need what few resources we have, first of all, to take care of ourselves, but then to stop these kind of corporate grabs. And it's so frustrating, right? Because you have so little money and you're up against Manchin, who's this guy's what word? Is he the richest guy in West Virginia? It's not a wealthy
Our
state.
governor actually is the richest man in West Virginia right now. He's a coal baron. Jim Justice actually doesn't live too far from me. Has a has about 120, I think over 100 different companies, coal companies, cotton, corn, machinery, just a lot of different stuff. And him and Joe have been buddies and enemies at the same time over the years.
Why
Jim is a Republican.
why do West Virginians continue to vote for these plutocrats when it's one of the poor, I won't say the poorest, it's a poor state.
We're
People,
in the bottom. We're in the bottom five. Sometimes we're worse than Mississippi or Louisiana. Well, why does the people in Louisiana, Mississippi do the same thing? Uh, we were we were captured by the Democratic Party for many years. It didn't do us any favors. I'm actually on the reform. I'm on the grassroots reformers that actually hopefully restored this year after 40 years, restored the Democratic Party as a people's party. We have a great dynamic chairman of the Democratic Party named Mike Puskins and a great co-chair in Danielle Walker, and they're both very progressive. You can check that out on their West Virginia Democratic page. But I don't know. That's probably a study in human nature. Why do we vote for things that's not in our self-interest?
Well, and it was not a rhetorical question. I think the answer has to be voters are not irrational. Voters are not stupid. I mean, I point to some races where I couldn't understand the result, but as you point out, I think the people in West Virginia recognize they don't have allies in either party. They don't have folks who are going to fight for them for better living conditions for them, a better environment. So it's really always trying to parse who's going to do me less harm.
Yeah, well, we could sit here and probably talk about that all day long and probably wouldn't come up with an answer.
Let's not. Let's talk about this. Let's talk. Here you go. This is what you're fighting against. And we were able, see, I was confused by some of these pictures. You can see here, I don't know if you know Ann Way. Here's her land.
I do know her. She's over in Virginia, over in Stephen Bernard. Yeah, I know them very well.
And we'll talk a little bit about this in the next picture. Then we're going to get to the caller who is calling us from Fairmont, West Virginia. I was a little confused by this photo, and I'm just going to jump forward to the next one as well. Here is another section, and you can just see this hideous scarring of the land, this muddy, instead of a clear mountain stream here on Anway Bernard's Field, you have a muddy, debris-filled, clogged, lifeless.
So that picture was taken a couple of years ago. They were building this pipeline across the region. This is probably a couple hours south of where I'm at. I'm on the edge of West Virginia, right at the border. And so they had lots of the rain. They dug the trench. They got the pipe to a certain point. Then they lost their permits to build the pipeline. So they just left it sitting in the water. And it floated for a long, long time. I don't know. I'm saying up nearly a year that floated up and down. So every time it rained, that pipe would rise up and then it would fall and it would rise up and it would fall. Possibly can't be good for the stress of the pipe. Is it flexing back and forth? And then they covered it. They've got to dig it back. If they ever get permits, they'll have to dig it back up and start again. This is next to their house.
And and Maury, just correct me if I'm wrong, there's no provisions for these pipeline companies to repair the damage that they do.
Well, you can't repair. They're supposed to have restoration. But once you when you cut all the trees down and you scalp the top of the mountains off and you disturb the topsoil and the subsoil to up to 15, maybe even deeper at times. I mean, I got one up on my hill here. They took about 8 feet of the top of the mountain off. Then they dug a trench about 10 to 12 feet deep. They buried the pipe and then put it all back. It's not, you can never mitigate that. You can never fix that, ever. If the pipeline is completed or not completed, whatever, you can never fix that. It changes the underground aquifer. I'm in karst, which is cave, porous rock. They have impacted, they say they haven't, but they have impacted the underground aquifers. I haven't had water. I've had to turn the water in my house off over almost a year and a half ago. I have no running water in my house that I can use. And I won't even try to deal with it until the pipeline is dead. And I know that I'll have to do something over again. So there's a lot of impacts, and every mile is a different impact. There's 300 miles of this plus another 75, and every mile of it will have a different impact, depending on whether it's a steep slope, whether through the Jefferson National Forest, through the pristine streams, through endangered species streams or other places. It will boggle your mind of what the government allows private corporations to do to landowners and the communities in these kinds of projects. And it has happening not just here, it's happening all over the country. And I mean, I have been involved in environmental work and stuff to a certain extent but when this project came along, it really opens your eyes. When you really educate yourself and don't take the politicians and the bureaucrats and the companies' words for things, and you actually go and do the research. I wasn't opposed to this project when it first started. I wasn't for it. I wasn't against it. I'm one of the few people that allowed the surveyors to survey across the property before they had eminent domain. And I figured out really quickly that I'm being fed a lot of BS. And we quickly became opposed to the project and have done everything I can to legally to stop this thing.
All right, Maury Johnson, go ahead. Yeah, please don't let me interrupt
I know we don't have a lot of time, so let me get people caught up on kind of where we're at. So they filed to build a pipeline late 2014. We went through what I call a pre-filing stage. There was hundreds and hundreds and thousands and thousands and thousands of pages of comments. I don't think they looked at anything that we sent out. The people that was against the pipeline sent out. FERC approved the project in late 2017. They took 300 people from West Virginia and about 150 people in West Virginia to federal court to take their land through eminent domain. I was one of those. You would think that you have a hearing and the judges would let you have a chance to speak. No, they don't let you have a chance to speak. They let in West Virginia, of the 150 that was taken to court in that initial hearing, they let 2 people speak, and everybody else couldn't speak. And so you're denied your right. That's where the property rights come in. We're fighting the eminent domain and the corrupt courts that don't let landowners have a voice for a very long time now. In Virginia, some of the folks in Virginia actually did have a condemnation hearing, but it was 2 years. Like some of those are still going on, I think.
Can I just interrupt you? Isn't eminent domain supposed to be for like the public good, not for a for-profit company? But I'm thinking like you build a park, right, for a neighborhood, and you've got a neighborhood where there's no parks within like.
I think that's the original intention of eminent domain through court proceedings and different things. There was the Natural Gas Act gave Congress gave FERC the right for eminent domain, which is being challenged, and then FERC turns it over to a private corporation. So that is actually in court. We have a group here in West Virginia has been through the federal court, and we actually have a case known as Bohan versus FERC. We're actually challenging the constitutionality of the
use of eminent domain
right. And it's been a long process.
For-profit company.
This all started winding through the court system in 2015 or 16. My email address is Maury, MAURYW Johnson at yahoo.com. People wanting to know something, they can contact me and I'll get you in contact with the correct people. I know you.
All right, and I'm going to go ahead and put that in the video after we're done. Maury Johnson.
Yeah,
Maury
okay.
Johnson at Yahoo.
And I put it in the chat.
And
so,
so that's we don't have a lot of folks on the Zoom because this is all on YouTube, Maury. We have a caller, but I do this is what confused me real quick. I will go to David. I'm going to bring you on, David, but just what confused me, and maybe if you can briefly explain it, was you called me the other day or yesterday, and I always hear from Maury when we need to do something to try to stop the pipeline. I thought we stopped it, right? I thought we had stopped the Democrats because it was a Democratic plan that Joe
a dirty deal. So MVP, we have stopped MVP over the coalition and different people. There's a lot of people across the country fighting this. Through the court system, they've lost permits that were issued illegally a number of times. In September, and Manchin said, well, I'm going to vote for this Inflation Reduction Act, which is a bunch of BS. It's not that good of a bill, really, if you actually look into it. There's a lot of giveaways to the fossil fuel industry. But for doing this, I've got this side deal. I'm going to do permitting reform, and we're going to mandate that the Man Valley Pipeline can be finished, and it doesn't matter what the courts say or what the law is. We're just going to waive all those. basically what it said. So we fought that in September. We fought it again in December twice. I think we defeated this 4 different times uh, between September and December. Had to go, and then so that was dead. Uh, they right after that they started trying to get their permits back, and they was given comment periods. And we just finished up filing comments to the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers and the U.S. Forest Service. The Fish and Wildlife Service didn't allow comments for the biological opinion, and they issued one. I'll get back to that. Let's stop there. Let's talk to David.
All right, David, you're on the air, right? Do we have you?
Yeah, I'm still here. Can you hear
All
me?
right, go ahead and thank you. We can hear you, and thank you so much for your patience. You could hear us, obviously. So, what's your comment, question, concern for Maury?
I think I joined you late. I got a link here, and I called in just to see what you're all about. And I probably didn't hear the part what his expertise is.
Well,
go ahead.
I've met David over at different places. Last I guess I saw David at the Marcellus Academy. He's been fighting the fracking in West Virginia and Pennsylvania and Ohio for many, many, many years. Was associated with a good friend April Keating up in central West Virginia. So Dave's been fighting. He lives in the area where all the fracking, and they are crisscrossed by pipelines everywhere up there. So I don't know all the history of David, but
well, David, real quick, tell us what the fracking does to the fresh water in your area.
Well, fracking is an old issue, and we haven't talked about fracking in this area maybe for 10 years. So whatever work was being done with fracking actually probably was done to the extent that fracking turned out to be something worthwhile to do. Basically, fracking, they put high pressure water down in the frackable areas, and it breaks up the strategy there and lets more of the petroleum products be brought back up. But now fracking is an old issue. Nobody even thinks about that anymore. And I mean, I'm not sure exactly to what extent the fracking actually was completed. But I know way back when we were talking about that, there were homes that did see differences and problems that was caused by the fracking. But again, that's really an old issue, and I haven't really heard anything about that yet lately.
well, I know there are still. Pardon me. There are still people working on that issue because it has. In central West Virginia, it's maybe something they don't talk about. They do other places in the country.
Well, I wouldn't doubt that, because it does affect the surface owners, and it just depends on where it's been being done actively. And like I say, that was a issue that really hasn't had much public attention for a long time. But as far as me and politics in northern West Virginia, this is close to where West Virginia University is, so it's a fairly well economically good area for West Virginia, and there's a lot of work going on for a long time, but we haven't worried about that issue. But my thing about the Democratic Party, I've been in the Democratic Party for a long time, and it got to the point where the Democratic Party, who had owned the state since the Depression, really wasn't doing much of anything. So they weren't all that helpful, and for doing things that at least I, as a Democrat and a citizen, thought they should be doing. So the party kind of lost out and didn't have a lot of, really wasn't doing much, and it really hasn't done much since then either. I still stay in the party, and we don't even have meetings or do much, at least in my area. And my area is a pretty much still a coal producing area. So that's part of the problem, and I think that's a problem in West Virginia. A lot of the citizens just don't feel like they can do anything, so they don't even complain much anymore, which is a kind of a way it probably happens in a lot of areas.
Oh, it's awful. It's just the
Yeah,
hope.
that's what I said. We do have a new leader. We do have new leadership in the Democratic Party, and it'll take a while to right the ship. But I'm really hopeful that our new leadership here will re-energize the party. It'll take several years, and we'll talk about that
Where
later.
are you
Let's
in
get.
West Virginia?
I'm going to appreciate your call, David. I'm going to let you go because we don't have that much time, as Maury pointed out, just a few more minutes. But so this is the thing. We stopped it with the help of the Republicans when the Democrats were proposing the dirty deal. Now the Republicans have their own dirty deal, their own permitting reform.
Yeah, they're actually doing quote unquote permitting reform, which is they want their idea of permitting reform is to get rid of regulations and fast track everything. And so I'll actually be in DC next week with some lobby meetings that's going on Monday. So, like I said, the power.org website that we have, or our Facebook page, you can kind of keep up with what's going on there. We need people to join us up there and write letters to Congress and contact your Congress. Say, no, local communities need to have a voice in what's happening in their communities, whether whether these are green energy projects or fossil fuel energy projects or whatever. The local communities needs to have input. Let's go back. Yeah, the third act and the it's kind of known as the National Day of Action or the 3-2-1-2-3 action. Well, that's March 21st, 2023. It actually starts on March 20th. It's also known as the Rocking Chair Rebellion. So way back a couple of years ago, some friends of mine, the people I got to meet, did a walk through Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and Delaware, and we decided that they was going to find some rocking chairs. And I found 5 of the original rocking chairs. I've got one outside here, and they sit in front of the Chase Bank World Headquarters Credit Card Center and demanded that Chase Bank stop funding this fossil fuel destruction of the planet. And so there's been that has inspired a few other smaller rocking chair rebellions around the country. And so on March 21st, a group of people from all over the country, led by Bill McKibben and others, I think Ben Jealous is going to be there. I'm not sure who all is going to be there. We're going to come together, and they're going to protest outside of 4 major banks in rocking chairs. You can take a 3-hour shift, sit in a rocking chair, very peaceful. What will people? I know some people are bringing their knitting and their crocheting and reading the books and stuff. So that actually starts on the 20th. That evening of the 20th is when that actually starts. So it's 24 hours, and then it will be finalized by a rally led by Bill McKibben and a bunch of speakers. I think I'm on the speakers list or a standby speaker. I don't know. I'll be there. Come by and say hi.
You got to come by and see Maury. Maury's a great speaker. You see it right now. And Maury, of course, I had the great honor of introducing you when we did the rally down on the Hill. In September?
That was in September, and then I got you and Jamie DeMarco to help me do a news briefing, and I really appreciate that. I look forward to seeing you, and I will send you some information.
I'll be there. I'll be there this Sunday, so I'll see you. I don't know.
I'll be there Sunday for a meeting. I'll be lobbying on Monday evening. I got to take my 3 hours in a rocking chair. I'll be doing stuff on Tuesday.
So join us. I want to tell folks, and you don't have to be in DC because it's a national day. So there'll be satellite events and other places. You got the link right there. It's easy to find, thirdact.org, and you can click in the /National Day Act -day, whatever, but you don't even have to. Just go to thirdact.org to find more information. Before I let you go, Maury, we also did want to know, you talked about how once that land is sullied, it's tainted. You don't get it back. It's the same when they start burning the fossil fuels. You can't put that carbon dioxide back in the carbon in the ground.
Or the methane or all the other helpful chemicals.
And I did want you to just comment on this because it's a little more complicated, but you have your group, your coalition includes activists, includes Native Alaskans, includes Native Americans in
The last folks I
Appalachia.
talked to in DC in December was the people from Will Island. And this whole idea that they approved this is very disheartening. Um, they may have approved it, but I think they've got a lot of court battles, and I don't think they'll win them. So this is a project that we cannot wish for a livable planet if we continue to do projects like this. Will Island, this on the North Slope of Alaska, it will, yeah, for a few dollars. There will be some people make lots of money, but I'll guarantee you, knowing from being in a sacrificial zone here in West Virginia, that in the long run, for every dollar that's taken out of there, they will probably lose $10 in economics of that area. Yeah, I've seen the devastation that happens from being in a sacrificial zone, and it's I can't believe that we're still doing this crap. Sorry, that's the way I feel about it. And I will be seeing the folks from Willow Island in DC. There will be some of those in DC, I'm sure, next week. And
So before we let you go, I've been criticized, Maury, for being too anti-democratic party, too anti-democrat. Obviously, the president who approved this, who made the final call, was Biden. We're going to talk more about this. When I say we, I'm going to talk more about this tomorrow. You can join me and call, but there's a little bit of a nuance. As I read the article in the New York Times and other places, Maury, the argument by the administration was, hey, we wish we could say no, but if we kibosh this completely, then it would all be tied up in courts. And you said you think that they'll be.
Oh, it's going to be tied up in court. Either way, it's going to be
either way. Either way.
But
Biden
better
seemed to feel like they were going to lose at some point. So better to approve this now, make it a smaller project. They approved 3 sites rather than 5. That's their defense. Do you buy that at all?
No. This is about trying to keep money from the fossil fuel industry funding campaigns. Joe Manchin has taken hundreds of thousands of dollars, more than any Republican, from the fossil fuel industry. This is about people being winners and losers. And the losers are the citizens, and the winners are the corporate politicians and the corporate CEOs. And I know that there'll be lots of activism around this. It's disheartening. It didn't surprise me. The ConocoPhillips and all these massive fossil fuel companies have billions and millions of dollars to put on lobbying, and then people like me and our coalition, we have whatever we can raise from whoever we can raise it from that's on our side, and so we're fighting with our left hand and our right hand tied behind our back, but we win. So there are good Republicans, there are good Democrats, they're bad on both sides.
How do you keep upbeat? I asked this to Medea Benjamin. She is a pro-peace activist, totally. And I'm not asking your opinion on Ukraine, but she's against war. She's against our involvement in the, deaths of hundreds of thousands of people overseas. I said, how do you stay upbeat? She said, sometimes it's tough, but she always has that good attitude, that, that peppiness. You do too, Maury. How do you keep that?
I don't know. Like I told somebody, we think we'll feed the Mountain Valley Pipeline. I said, well, for some of us, our very lives depend upon it. So we have to keep in this fight. We have to make the choice to say, okay, sometimes you see some things, say, well, that's tough loss. But it was take a deep breath. And a good way is to come and work with people like the Third Act people and Bill McKibben and people at Our Revolution and wherever. Our Poor People's Campaign is a great group of people that working for positive change for the planet. So you just got to take the mindset that I've got to stay at this.
I want to thank you so much, Maury. I'll see you this Sunday. It's great to talk to you.
I'll see you in DC sometime. I don't know where, but I'm sure I'll see you sometime.
All right. We'll see you soon. I'm going to continue the conversation here at Halitics for just a little bit longer this morning. Hope to have you with us. Let's see if I can transition. Supposed to get me Hal.
By the way, that's the picture behind me is Peters Mountain on the border of Monroe, West Virginia, where Mountain Valley Pipeline wants to destroy the Appalachian Trail and the National Forest. I took that picture in 2016.
And you won't see that beautiful sky. If it's red, it'll be red from fires and the
Fires.
lake and from
That was about 6 o'clock one morning in June.
methane burn off, and we see it everywhere across the country. Thank you so much. It's always
I know you got to go. See you next week.
It's an honor to see you as always. There goes our good friend Maury Johnson. And let me see why I'm going to see if I can stop this. There we go. Wow. So I'm still working a little bit on the transitions, folks, because when we have people on and then they go off, there can be a little bit mess up there, but we're getting close. You're listening to you're watching. I shouldn't say listening. You're watching Halitics on YouTube at the Halitics channel. And I want to get to a couple more. So let's see if I can get that slide deck back up. We've got more issues to discuss. And I did want to just tell you there is some defense, right, for Joe Biden that I want to be able to share with you, because I was attacked. I've been attacked online a lot as a, whatever, not so much a Russian asset. I don't get called a Russian asset, but more, why do you just talk about Democrats? Why are you always criticizing the Democrats? Why don't you ever talk about Republicans? And I posted the story of Willow, and Maury calls it Willow. So I'm going to agree that it must be Willow because he would know better than I, but the Willow Creek story. And I was like, well, how can you talk? I mean, why are you getting on my case for pointing out planet destruction, the climate cataclysm that here Biden is helping, promote the end of the world. And you're saying I should talk about how Republicans are fascists. Well, it's fascistic to burn up your planet, to burn up your mother, isn't it? To do it for corporations. Isn't fascism the uniting of corporate and government, corporations and government? And that's exactly what we see when the government approves these, drilling in sensitive, pristine areas. And it's the same thing with the Mountain Valley Pipeline, where the government is saying, yeah, we're going to bring an eminent domain suit on behalf of a for-profit corporation. So I don't get that argument that somehow I'm supposed to talk about how bad the Republicans are when Biden's in power and the Democrats are not challenging corporate greed. In fact, they're participating in it. So Republicans suck too. And we now see McConnell, who's looking to give away, to destroy West Virginia. But it's both sides. It's not one or the other. They're both the problem. But the Republicans don't really pretend that they're on the side of the environment. They deny that there's even an environmental crisis. And so often they'll say the best thing for workers is to give corporate elites whatever they want. The Democrats don't say that. The Democrats claim to be on the side of working people. They claim to be on the side of the environment, and then they betray it. So I don't get the argument that somehow, I don't get that argument that somehow I'm supposed to, talk more about Republicans and less about Democrats. All right, let's see if we can get this slide up. It's been a little bit of a headache for me. Still working on this, trying to get everything as good as I can. We're getting close. I know I'm very optimistic, and I do believe we're going to get there. But let's see if we can get this to show the slide deck correctly. And I'm going to go ahead and transition. So there's my slideshow. Let's see if we can make that nice and big. And there you go. So back-to-back bank collapses came. So we're going to move on. And again, Democrats helping, and we'll get rid of that Maury text there. Democrats, part of the problem clearly as they're part of the deregulatory. Now, this was a deregulatory push, and you'll see what I'm talking about. Yes, the Republicans are worse. No argument. But sometimes you say, well, with Democrats like Barney Frank, why do we need, do we even need Republicans? So here you go. Donald Trump in 2018, we're talking about the bank collapses. Now, we first had the Silicon Valley Bank, and then now Signature Bank in New York, and I believe there's one other as well. So in 2018, Trump signed a law watering down the landmark Regulatory Reform Act that Obama had enacted during and after the global financial crisis, and that's Dodd-Frank. So the change is, though, that the watering down, let's put it that way, had a surprising supporter. Who? But Barney Frank. And I love the second part. This is from New York Times today. I think it says yesterday, but it's in today's paper. One beneficiary of the change was Signature Bank. Now, I love that beneficiary. Shouldn't they put that in quotes? Did Signature Bank really benefit from having reforms that required it to maintain a certain amount of assets in cash or very, very secure, government debt, short-term government debt? Because one of the problems that Silicon Valley Bank ran into is it started buying long-term treasury bills. And when interest rates rose, the underlying value of those assets dropped. They could not liquidate the assets and pay off the people who had lent them money, basically depositors. They couldn't pay their depositors off because the underlying assets, the long-term treasury bills, had declined in value due to increased interest rates. And that is something that they wouldn't have been able to do were it not for the regulatory reform that Trump signed off on, but that Barney Frank, and I would call him Barney Prank, that Barney Frank lobbied for. So you again see, we just don't really have allies. I just don't see it. We just don't have allies with either party. And again, is this what we want, folks? Is this what we're looking for? Because I just, man, it's just awful, dude. Isn't it just awful? This is what we get from both parties. This is what we get from both parties, a failure to support us, to be on our side. And it's just the way it is. And people are saying, well, Hal, you've got to be less negative about Democrats. And I'm like, why? Why should I be less negative about Democrats when Barney Frank is out there and clearly he's part of this problem, right? I mean, he's he's lobbying to make it easier for banks, even large ones. Scores of very large banks escape the Federal Reserve's initial stress tests. And so what, again, is the result? And I want to show myself here. I'm kind of irritated. I am not seeing myself right now. Let's see if I can figure out. There we go. Let's see. We'll put myself back on because I think you want to see a face, right? You want to put a face to the voice whenever possible. So I think we've got this a little bit better here. We'll give you that in a sec. So Frank lobbied to loosen up the regulations that he had originally supported in Dodd-Frank. And because of that, the bank, not enormous, not the JP Morgans or the Citibanks or the Wells Fargos, but secondary, but still very large banks got to put more and more assets in very risky investments. Now, why would Barney Frank do this? I mean, he seemed to get it. Why would he do that? What did he get out of it? He got $2.4 million from Signature Bank. So we're going to get that up there, the whole thing. So what did Signature Bank do in order to, because it was freed up. It didn't have to keep all of its money in short-term treasuries, in cash, and other very secure investments, money markets, and the like. What did it do? And we know why Frank lobbied. Now we do, because he got $2.4 million to do it. And again, if I'm supposed to, I understand, talk about Republicans. And yes, Trump signed the bill. It's awful. That's part of the reason we have the financial crisis right now. Although it's not as bad. There has, and it's not as bad probably because of Dodd-Frank that wasn't watered down for the big banks, the biggest banks. By the way, if you want to join me, you can see the phone number 240-363-7190, 240-363-7190. But for smaller banks like Silicon Valley, and which was putting all of its money in long-term treasuries, which are risky, and in startups in Silicon Valley, which are risky, as you can imagine. Startups are always risky. Sometimes they're, valueless. They're worthless. They're run by fraudsters, like that company that had the blood, right? They were supposedly could tell from one little drop of blood all your entire medical history, by Elizabeth Holmes, Theranos, and it was a complete scam. It was a ramp. It was nothing. It had zero value. So startups are risky. And as a result, if you invest in startups, you got to keep a significant amount of money in more traditional protected investments. So how did Signature Bank respond to increased market risk as the stock market got higher over the past few years? How did it respond to less obvious returns from traditional investments? Well, they bought crypto. Now, gee, that's a good move. That's really smart. And as many of us suspected, certainly I did, this is an quote asset, unquote, with no real value except what the next fool will pay for it. It's not backed by any government. Crypto, it doesn't have any underlying value. You buy a company, maybe it's overpriced, maybe it's overvalued, but they presumably do something. Maybe they make computers like Apple. Maybe they have close to a monopoly on software of a certain type, like Amazon or Uber. And I'm not defending those companies. They do terrible bad and we don't regulate them, but they do have assets that generate income, that throw off real money. Whereas crypto does none of that. It's just purely a gamble. It's a speculation on nothing. It's a greater fool investment. And it's the total opposite of what a bank should be doing. Banks are supposed to borrow money from depositors, pay them a relatively modest interest rate in return for guaranteed security, because first of all, the banks are regulated, and second of all, there's insurance. So they borrow money from you, not a whole lot, 1,000 here, 2,000 there, and then they aggregate that money and they lend it presumably to community businesses, to small businesses in the community. And then you have a virtuous circle. The worst thing they could do for everybody is buy this crypto. It doesn't help small business, doesn't help the community, does nothing. That's what Barney Frank is lobbying for. That's what your Democratic ally is lobbying for. So again, I'm not supposed to point that out. Is that not fascism of the worst sort? Is that not a marriage? Now, I understand he's on government now. He's a lobbyist. But I mean, if you're a former colleague of Barney Frank and you're still in the House, are you going to take his call? Damn right. I mean, whose else call would you take? One of the most powerful, connected people ever, probably someone who raised money for you when you were first running for office, who's got money now to spread around. Who's the number one donor to Hakeem Jeffries? I believe it's ABAC, but if it's not ABAC, it's Wall Street. It's the investment banks. And it's those are 1, 2. So this is the kind of guy who he calls you take his call. Democratic power broker. All right, my laptop is about to die, so I got to plug it in. This is no surprise. Let's see. There we go. We got it back up. 2402. Well, no, that's not. I got to get the number right. 240-363-7190. Welcome to Halitics. Got a few more minutes. It was great having Maury on, by the way. So let's get to our next slide here. So feel good. I do want to play this. This was me yesterday. You might see me. I'm holding the sign. No surprise. I'm holding the anti-Democrat sign in this video. And we are fighting here. We are fighting here for healthcare for all. And it's feel good, but it's feel bad because these folks in this video are, I mean, they're in debt. They are not getting the treatment, the care they need. They have no allies or very few, even in state government. In a state government that's overwhelmingly Democratic, we cannot get single payer care. So feel good, but recognize, sadly, tragically, that I mean, things are, I don't know what to tell you folks. I can't, I say you got to be upbeat, right? I'm talking to Medea, I'm talking to Maury, and they're upbeat. And I'm like, how do you stay upbeat? And it's stories, when you see this, and I say you should feel good, but it is not, man, I mean, there are so many of some of you, I'm sure, times are tough. And we don't have friends. We don't have allies. What's the solution? People say, well, how when you beat up on Democrats, that's the solution. I'm saying to you, they're not. They're not. They haven't been. We've got to come up with something. That's why I'm here, to try to come up with something. Let's see if we can get this video going for you. And we'll close out on kind of a feel-good note, I hope.
To every Marylander.
If we can inform them, if we can make consumers more aware of what's going on and what their options are, and we can rally people around this cause, I think awareness and education is the first step to making a lot of this possible.
Saria,
I'm going to just stop this for a second, because what Crystal was talking about there is making Marylanders aware of the fact that if you are poor, and you need treatment and you need hospitalization, the hospitals are required under Maryland state law to treat you and not to bill you. And they have continued to bill people. So we're saying we want to empower consumers of healthcare in Maryland. It's not enough. We all know it's not enough. But when you get treatment, you are not supposed to be billed if you don't have the money. And that's the way it works in Maryland. And we're trying to educate folks to that fact. Or here's Saria. She is someone I know. She's
and worked hard and slowly paid off her parents' medical debt, but she knows not everyone can. She hopes legislators will take this issue to heart so others don't end up in the same position.
Right,
I would like to see a
go,
more inclusive medical system that covers some of these bills, so people are not, when they're in their most vulnerable state, not worried about, that next bill.
This group is urging folks to call or write their legislators in support of this legislation. In Annapolis, Kim Dacey, WBAL TV 11 News. To every Marylander.
Stop that. So I thought they did a real nice job with that video there on WBAL TV and covered the rally well. I'm going to post this video once it's processed on Halitics. Remember, subscribe, like. We're going to keep doing this. And call me tomorrow, 240-363-7190. We got lots of great guests coming up. We'll let you know about them as we move forward.